Hi everyone, if you're thinking about how videos like this are made, or if you're thinking about creating them yourself, then this is the video for you. I'm going to talk about the thinking process behind making a motion graphics video. Then I'm going to show you how to break down those thoughts and turn them into actionable steps in the animation application of your choice. This video is not a tutorial, so I don't expect you to follow along with it. I'm going to talk about some complex concepts that you don't really need to fully understand to enjoy and learn from this video. My goal is that by the end of the video you will hopefully be able to look at any other animated videos online and be able to break down the thought process behind them that the artist went through, so that you can also get a grasp of, if you were to create it yourself, how you would go about doing them. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is the steps I take or the steps that you should take when you see a video and you're thinking how to create it. So what I usually like to do is download the video, and I like to kind of watch it a few times to get a good understanding of everything that's happening. There are some videos that are really easy to understand. You can see there's like a few things that are playing against each other, and you can follow it rather quickly. So once you break it down, then you can figure out, okay, how can I do each of those steps? So I'm gonna walk you through how I would break this video down, and hopefully this can help you not only recreate what you're seeing here, but also recreate any other videos that you might see online. So let's get started. So I rendered this video, so I have a copy, but I would start with downloading the video and watching it a few times back and forth and getting a really good understanding of what's happening. So for example, if I just stop at a frame, what do you see? So that's a really good place to start. So what I see on the screen is that there are a lot of these pieces that look like peel shapes. There's a floor or a background that's there, and these pieces, they look regular in some places. Like you can see in this area, it's like a square grid, but somewhere here it looks like the grid is like shifting because they're moving around. And also I noticed that they are smaller in some areas and they get larger in some other areas. So the size of them changes and the position of them changes as well. So if you just follow one of these, you see that it's moving around a bit. So if you just look at one of them, they're moving around. Like if you imagine a bunch of things on the seawater, as the waves come and go, things move back and forth. So that's happening. Another thing that's changing is size. And if you also pay closer attention, let's find another frame that shows it more clearly. They are also turning. So you can see the objects on top right here are pointing to the top right. These here are pointing to the bottom right. And these here are just pointing, they're like more straight, they're pointing to the right. So there is three things that are happening with these pills. One is they're changing in size, they're moving around, and they're rotating also. And now let's watch the video one more time and see what else happens. So it looks like the logo of OnlyFans is being cropped out. So it's like, I'm thinking there's something that prevents them from being shown. We can get to, so all of the things I'm talking about, we will get to step by step how to create them in Cinema 4D. And yeah, so for this part, it looks like you just crop out the area that is the OnlyFans logo. And if you go a bit further, it looks like the empty area is now filled with white ones. Okay, so let's look at what's happening here. The first thing I notice is that they're not yellow, they are white. So you can kind of think of them like being on a different layer. They have a different material applied to them. And I can also see that they're a bit larger than the yellow ones that are around them. Like especially here, you can see that these are almost touching, but these are not. So maybe there's something with scale that's happening there. So the first thing that's different is color. The second one is their size. But I see that they're moving with the rest of the yellow ones. So if I follow these items here, they all feel like they're part of one. And they are getting smaller where the yellow ones are getting smaller. They get bigger in the same places. So it's almost as if they're the same, they're being affected by the same effectors, and they're behaving the same, but they have slightly different properties like color and size. The size is slightly increased and the color is white instead of yellow. Okay, I think that's about it for this video. And what I usually like to do is write all of these down so that I can mentally figure out the steps that are required to create something like this. And yeah, I would go from there. I think one last thing that to pay attention is right here. If I scroll down just a bit, like you can see that the left side of the logo is now hidden, but the right side is still there. So like it's almost like it's fading in from the left. And also the white pills, when they're showing up, yeah, you can see it very clearly here. They start from the left and they complete the empty space basically. So that's basically all. If I were to break down a video like this, those are all the things that I would be paying attention to. Yeah, and taking notes helps a lot. Like if you wanna do start with anything like this, I would suggest take notes. Like have the video open on your laptop or phone, and just take notes of what you see. What are the things that stand out to you? And that really helps a lot, because sometimes you might go in the process of creating something but you forget it, that for example this thing fades from left to right. And you can also note if you like it or not. Would it have been better if it all suddenly showed up, or if it was from right to left, top to bottom, or if there was some more effects on it. So step one is to observe and really try to see all of the small things, and then the next steps you can see how you would do it and how you would make it better, for example. Okay, so I have the project already open here. So the program I use to make these videos is called Cinema 4D. I started learning about 5 years ago, and the main reason I picked Cinema 4D out of everything else was that it was quite easy to use, easy to get started with. Like within the first day or two of using it, you can create some amazing animations right away. And that's what really got me passionate about Cinema 4D. I didn't have to wait like weeks or months before I could start making some videos. Like within a day or two, I could make some 3D renderings, and just blew my mind that you can do this so quickly and so intuitively. And the only thing that I was sad about was why didn't I find this tool earlier? It was really amazing. So just to give you a quick run through of what you're looking at right now, on the left side is the preview window, where I see how the video is going to look like one frame at a time. In the middle is basically my workspace. This is where all the objects that I place are going to be there. And in this section are all of my objects and layers. And down here are all of my materials. And on the right side are the properties panel. So if I select the folder, I see the controls that I have for folders. If I select this object, which is a cloner, then I see the cloner properties. And inside the properties, I have some basic controls, the position of them, and some other controls. Depending on what you select, you're gonna see different things here. So I'm gonna hide most of these objects here and start with the setup. So if you use the middle mouse, you can switch to a different view, your 4 different views. I've added a camera, so I'm gonna click out of the camera so I can see what's happening. So this is what I started with. I have a camera and I have a floor. Let me hide this as well. And let's render this and see what it looks like. Okay, I can click the play button here and see a preview of what I'm looking at in my workspace. So right now I have a floor that has a material attached to it. It is a material floor, and you can see my floor here. I can raise it, I can lower it. And as I move it around, you can see that it's changing things on the right side. So if I move it down, you're seeing something that we're gonna use further down the video to do some of the tricks with it. This is the OnlyFans logo. So I'm gonna hit Control Z or Command Z to bring the floor back to its original space. You can also see that there's a sky with some light on it, and I added this sky tool called Arnold Sky. We don't have to worry too much about the details of these. So the main things that you would want to know is that there is a floor, there's a source of light, and there's a camera. And I can use this button to switch to what the camera sees and switch out of it. So I would switch out of the, I'm gonna pause this to make it go faster. So I would switch out of the camera if I want to move around and I want to set things up in my scene that are not necessarily inside the view of the camera. But I would want to switch back to the camera to see what the final render is going to look like. So one of the first things we noticed in the video was the pills, and there was a lot of them. So to add a pill, it's quite straightforward. I can hold my mouse on the cube shape and I can create a capsule. I can bring it here, I can make it smaller to look roughly like what I wanted. But as you noticed in the video, there wasn't just one capsule, there were thousands of them. So now you might be asking, so how can I make 1,000 of these? Do I just like copy them one by one and just like hope to get to 1,000 and put them in a perfect grid? Well, you don't need to do that. There is a tool called a cloner, and it is a really common tool among pretty much all of the motion graphic design tools or 3D design tools. In Cinema 4D, it's called a cloner. And if I click on it, and if I put my capsule inside the cloner, if I zoom out a bit, you can see that right now we have 3 capsules that are stacked on top of each other. If I click on the cloner in my layers, under object, I can see some of the properties that we have for the cloner object. So I don't want to copy them in one line, I want them to be in a grid. And for that I would use a grid array. And I'm gonna look around and see what's going on. Alright, so I have some controls here. I have this option called count. And there is a few of them. So this one seems to increase it in each one of them is increasing the count in different axes. So this one is just adding it in height. So I only want one layer, so I'm gonna leave the middle number to 1. But I want this to be a lot closer to each other. So you can see right here it says size. I know that the size of my capsule is, let's make it a radius of 5 and a height of 50 or 100. And I'm going to move it higher by 50. Oh, it's not making a difference because I have to change the position using the cloner itself. So I'm going to move it higher by 50 so that it's now touching the floor. And if I go back to the cloner, to the object controls, so we know that the radius of each of the pills is 5 centimeters. So what is the space that we want between each of the pills? So I think a space of 20 would be enough. It would give us a really nice density. And I'm going to also give it 20 the other side. And I'm going to switch back to my main camera to get an understanding of what the final render would look like with just what we have now. Okay, this looks good, but I need a lot more pills. Luckily, I already have the one that I created for the video. So this is the capsule, and I put them in the cloner, which I renamed to yellow because these are the yellow pills. So if I turn on the render view now, that's what I see, a lot of pills. So this is the first step of what we took a note of during our observation of the video, is that there are a lot of peels and it looked like they were in a grid. The second thing we noticed was that some of the peels were bigger than some other ones. So one of the really powerful tools that you have in Cinema 4D is called effectors. And one of the most common objects that you apply effectors to are cloners. So you can use a cloner to clone a peel 1,000 times, and you can use one effector to apply an effect like resizing or movement to all of the 1,000 clones at the same time, which makes it really easy and powerful to create really complex and organic shapes. You can find the effectors right under the MoGraph tool on top. And what I'm looking for is the plane effector. There are a lot of more powerful effectors down here, but I find that learning how to really master the plane effector, like it sounds plain and simple, but it actually becomes really powerful when you combine a few of them together. So for example, I can click on plane, and because I had the cloner yellow selected, if I go to effector, you can see that the new plane effector that we added, if I rename it to 1, is already added under my effectors. And you also notice that everything kind of shifted towards the camera, because when I click on the effector, you can see that the position is set to 1. Set to the y-axis 100 centimeters, which means everything just comes up 1 meter. But that's not what I want. So the first thing we noticed was scale. So I want to change the scale of all of these peels with this cloner. So if I turn on scale, and so we don't want to change the scale in like different directions. Hopefully we want. So if you look at the video, the peels change scale uniformly. They don't like get stretched or get squeezed in any one direction. Turn on uniform scale, and I'm gonna give it a value of 1. So they're getting bigger. If I give it a value of 0, they're the same size that we started with. If I give it a value of minus 0.7, they get really small. Okay, but in the video, not all of the peels got small at the same scale. How can we achieve that? So there is this tool under the effectors called a fall off. So a fall off helps you control where you want to apply these effectors more. And one of the simplest form of a fall off is a linear field. So if I click this, you can see that now on the left side, the peels are not affected by the scale plane effector that we have applied, but there's a fall off that it slowly gets increased. So if I select this linear field that we just added and I move it around, you can see how it's changing them. Like I'm using the fall off to control which one of these thousands of peels gets affected by the resizing. But the linear field is not the only way that I can control this. So I'm going to delete this. And if I hold on the linear field, I can see all of the controls that I have here. So for example, if I select a box field, I have this box that I can move around, and everything inside the box now gets smaller or gets affected by the effector, and everything outside doesn't. I also have the option to invert the effector, so everything outside does get affected, but everything inside doesn't. So this could be useful. Actually, if I invert this, if you imagine a ball is rolling on a carpet and you're like doing a close-up shot, and you want the strands on the carpet to like go down as the ball is moving, what you would do is attach this box field or a sphere field to the object that is rolling on the carpet, and as it's moving around, it's going to have this dipping effect where things go down. So if I go out of my camera view to show you better how it looks like, there, isn't it amazing? How quickly can you make something like that? But if someone who's not too familiar with this program, if they look at it, they might think that this is a really complex process. But I'm hoping that by the end of the video, you could look at similar videos online and be able to break down what you see and be able to figure out how the artist created this. So if you look at this, you see that there is one object that is being copied a lot of times. So it's a cloner object, not that complicated. And suddenly in one place, all of the objects seem to react to a force. So in this case, if you look on the left, how are the objects changing? They're getting smaller. Okay, so the effector must be a scale effector, which you can find under the plane effector. But it's not affecting everything. It's only affecting a sphere. It's only affecting an area that looks like a square. So the fall off is a square or a cube. Yeah, so hopefully that explains it. And so now what I'm going to do is actually create the random effector that gives us the wavy feel of things moving around. So if I click on our effectors again, under fall off, I'm gonna hold down the box field, and I'm gonna look for the random field. So when I turn it on, you can see that it's a bit chaotic, and it looks like there is no order to anything that's happening. So if I switch to the field tab under the random field, you can see that the random mode is set to noise. So the concept of noise is another one of the really powerful tools that Cinema 4D provides to be able to create really complex things really easily. So this is a good preview of what the different noises in Cinema 4D look like. So this artist has created these bump maps that are used to help visualize the noises so we can get a good understanding. So in these renders, the noise is used to displace the surface of these squares. But we want to use the noise to change the size. We don't want to affect anything to move. We want to use the noise to affect the size. And you can think of it in any area that is taller, it gets stronger. And in any area that it is lower, it gets smaller. So if I look around, this one looks too geometric. I don't want to have sudden smaller and big shapes here. And box noise seems to have like some patterns of boxiness going on, which I don't think is also ideal. Displaced turbulence looks really wavy, which is the feeling I wanted to go for. Stupel, I think that's how you say it, also looks really good, although it has some really strong peaks. I'm not sure how they're gonna look like. So let's try displaced turbulence. So if I go on the random field, right now the noise type is Perlin. So I'm gonna click on displaced turbulence, and if I change my camera here, you can see that there is a slight change happening, but it's not really strong enough. So what I'm gonna do is go to remapping and see if I can find a way to make it more pronounced. So okay, right away I can see that it's affecting it a bit. So if I maybe move this one here, move this one here. Okay, so right now I see a lot of variation, but you can see that this object right next to this one, there is a lot of change in a very small space. So I want to increase the size of how long it takes for these changes to take. So right now the noise is really compact and it's making changes like this, but I want to expand the noise to make changes like this. So I don't want it to jump from 0 to 1 in one pill. I want it to take 100 pills to create a bigger wave, to get the really like wavy motion. And for that one, what I would do is simply increase the size of the field, increase the scale. So let's try 1000% and see how that looks like. And right away I can see that this looks a lot better. I can really get the feeling that there's a field that is affecting all of this. I'm going to switch to the camera and get a quick preview of how this looks like. Alright, we're getting somewhere. But I think it's still too small. I want to increase it a little bit more. Maybe 4000. That looks a lot better. But if you looked at the video, you will notice that the pills are not staying small and staying large all the time, but the noise seems to move as it's affecting the pills. And it's really easy to add movement to it. So there's this item here called animation speed. I'm going to set the speed to 100%. I'm going to turn off the preview because it slows down the workspace when it's on, because it tries to render every frame. So now if I hit play, you can see that it's moving, and it's really great. I have already created another noise field that I've already applied to our cloner. So I'm going to delete the one that we just created and turn on the one that I initially had. So if I bring it back to frame 0, this is what we had. Okay, so right now the waves are there, but the motion of the waves is not really there. So now I'm going to show you all of the effectors that I use to apply to the pills. So the first one is called size, and I like to name these effectors so I know which one is affecting where. So if I need to make a change, for example, to the movement, I can quickly know where it is and I can go make the changes that I want to make to it. So it's also a good idea to keep your layers organized here, keep your objects organized. So if you need to make a change in the future, you can quickly find it and make the changes that you want. So we already covered what the sizes are. The next one, I think it would be a good idea to talk about movement. So movement is another plane effector. So if I select it and I go under the parameters, and if you look here, you can see that rotation and scale are turned off, and it is only affecting the X and Z axis. The Y axis causes the pills to go up and down away from the floor, which is not what I wanted. I only want them to move on the surface. So if I turn this on, you can see how, if I start from the beginning, you can see how it's affecting the pills. I'm gonna turn off the size effector so that we can only look at the movement effector while it's isolated. And you can see that it also looks like it has a randomness applied to it. And if I open it, you can see that yes, there is a random field applied to it. I use the gaseous, I'm not sure how to say that. I'm using this noise, and these are the settings I'm using. And you will notice that the animation speed of this one is set to 20, and because initially when I set it to 100, things were moving too quickly, and I didn't want it to be so quick moving and panicky, so I slowed down the movement effector, the animation speed, to only 20%. You notice that there's another value here called the loop period, and it's set to 450 frames. And the reason for that is when I initially timed the animation, it was about 15 seconds, and I'm rendering these at 30 frames per second. So 15 seconds becomes 450 frames. And because I want it to be a perfect loop, all of my noise fields have a loop period of 450 seconds, and which means my last frame, so if I play it towards the end, and you can see as it goes in the beginning, it continues. My last frame and my first frame are actually the same, and it is controlled by this loop period. If I had a video that was only 10 seconds and I was rendering at 30 frames a second, I would make the loop period 300 frames. That way it would do its random thing, but at exactly 300 frames or 10 seconds in, it would start to repeat, and that's how you can get the perfect seamless loop in videos like this. So I'm gonna turn off the movement effector too, and look at the rotation effector that I applied. So if I play the video for this one, I'm going to bring the camera out of our main camera and look at it from the side. So you can see how it's rotating the objects. And this thing also has same noise field effector applied to it. I made sure to change the noise slightly so that they don't match perfectly, because when the two noises match perfectly, it looks like it doesn't have the same organic feel. Like when it's rotating, it's getting smaller, and when it's not, it gets bigger. So when they are the same exact noise applied to everything, your brain starts to pick up on these clues that, hey, that's the same field applied to everything. So it's like a force that is moving it. So when objects move to the right, they disappear. They shrink and disappear, and they rotate. But when they move to the left, they get bigger and they don't turn anymore. So I didn't want that relationship there. And how I achieved that effect was simply in the random effector, there's this field called seed. And what seed allows you to do is like a random seed. You know, in Minecraft or other games, there's a random seed, which is the world generation seed. It is actually the same concept here. So my number one seed is the same as any other one's number one seed if they're using Cinema 4D and they're using the same noise type. So each of these effectors have so each of these effectors has a different seed number. So movement has a seed number 4, and size has seed number 1. Rotation Y has seed number 2, and rotation Z, I gave it a number 3. So now let's see how all of these look together. If I go to the camera, actually let's see how the rotation looks like on its own. It's not that impressive. Let's turn on the size and movement effectors as well. It looks a lot better now. Let's go to an earlier frame that we don't have the logo. Alright, looking really good. It looks really natural and organic, which is the feeling I was going for. The video is becoming really long, so I think I'm gonna stop here and leave the rest of it for another video.